It's the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. I'm John Gibson. Good to have you along on this Friday. Well, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, known commonly as ICE, made arrests in Evansville this week. ICE has not released much information on the local raids, but we are learning more. Joining me now are correspondents from the Evansville Courier and Press, Sarah Loesch and John Webb. Good to have both of you with us.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right. Well, I understand now that we have learned, and this was reported first from your colleague Houston Harwood, that several people were transported to a facility in western Kentucky. Maybe, Sarah, you'd like to start. What have we learned about what happened there?
Sure. So Houston, again, as you mentioned, our colleague at the Courier, he reported and spoke with some people down in Kentucky who are allowed, they have a retainer with ICE to be able to keep people in their facility when they're picked up before they're transported to wherever they're going to be going. We have a loose number of about 14 people that the jailer down there believes that are being held from raids that happened in the southern Indiana area from this week.
Okay. Now we're talking about the Hopkins County Jail in Madisonville. Any word on their names?
Yes, so we do have names for everyone who is being held on an ICE retainer. They are listed within the bookings of the jail, just like any other person would be when they're brought in. But in this instance, there aren't any local charges that are associated with them, so there's no lookup of addresses or anything like that, which is why I said we have a loose number. That's just sort of, we don't know for sure that these are Evansville residents or anything like that. It's pickups from the southern Indiana area when ICE was in town this week.
Yeah, and the 14 number came from the Hopkins County jailer. That was his estimate as far as the number of people picked up in Evansville.
Yeah. That is John Webb speaking to us here. John, do we have any idea what is next for those detainees that were taken to Madisonville?
They'll likely go before a federal judge or go through the process. The thing is, we don't know why they were picked up. We don't know if it's a matter of, they committed some they were already wanted on some kind of warrant and picked up, or if it was just an immigration violation. A lot of this is pretty shadowy. And of course, last week we ran into the problem of one of the people who was picked up from the Vandenberg County Jail on basically a traffic offense. We reported this last week. He was picked up several months ago. He's gone into the system, and when Houston reached out to both local and federal officials, none of them could tell us where he was in the process, what detention center he might be in, if he's already been sent back. So a lot of these proceedings after someone is picked up can get pretty confusing and drowned in red tape and secrecy.
Yes, indeed. We're talking to Sarah Loesch and John Webb of the Evansville Courier and Press about the ICE raids that happened in Evansville this week. Now, as you've covered, and I know we've covered it here at WNIN as well, John, Evansville Police and the Vandenberg County Sheriff's Office didn't take part in the raids. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, they're not authorized to do so. Local authorities don't enforce immigration violations. I talked to Sheriff Noah Robinson the day after the raid, and his office had put out a long Facebook message explaining why they didn't take part. I also talked to EPD Sergeant Anthony Ossiker, who explained why. Basically, like I said, they're not authorized to do so. Sheriff Robinson said his office offered to help ICE pick up anybody who may be on a felony warrant, and they said that they were here for lower level offenses, so Vandenberg didn't take part. In order for them to take part, they have to have what's known as 287G, is that correct? Yeah. Kind of a deal with the federal officials to do so, and Vandenberg and APD, apparently they do not, and they didn't take part.
Yeah.
That caused, some confusion and consternation from people who supported these raids here locally and accusing them of, telling them to do their job, and when in fact that's not their job at all.
Yeah. And Sheriff Robinson emphasized that anyone, immigrant or not, can be arrested for a crime, but just not on immigration status alone. Correct?
Right. just like anyone else, if they pick someone up who is undocumented, who has committed a crime, and they go to the Vanderburgh County Jail, ICE can issue what's called a detainer at that point, which is basically a request for the jail to hold the person, I think, 72 hours after what would have been their release date, so ICE can come and detain them and pick them up. And the Vanderburgh County Jail does honor those. And so that's not an issue. It's not like the local authorities are completely refusing to, go along with this. People throw around, words like sanctuary city, which is kind of meaningless at this point. And it's not one of those cases. They do comply with federal law. It's just they're not authorized to go out and pick someone up on an immigration violation alone.
Right. Now, the sheriff mentioned, again, a matter of trust. I think the word trust he used in that, not taking part of the arrest for immigration violations. Can you touch on that a little bit, what the sheriff said about that?
Yeah, he sent me a long email after I reached out to him on Wednesday, and part of the quote is what he said is, unless a state or federal law change requires it, our deputies won't participate in generalized immigration enforcement outside of the jail. Using local police for immigration enforcement undermines trust between law enforcement and the communities we serve. And he continues, when federal agencies like ICE come in and leave, we are the ones who remain behind to police the aftermath. If people are afraid to call the local police to report a crime out of fear of deportation, then victimization increases, witnesses stay silent, and crimes go unsolved. Right. Public safety depends on cooperation and that starts with trust.
Yeah, that's a statement from Vanderburgh County Sheriff Robinson about not taking part in these arrests from the ICE agents. This is the Friday Wrap. I'll remind everyone on WNIN. We're speaking with John Webb of the Evansville Courier and Press, as well as Sarah Loesch from the Courier and Press. You can see their stories at courierpress.com. And as always, we appreciate them coming in to share what they've learned this week with the ICE raids. John, you mentioned social media, and also perhaps, Sarah, you'd like to weigh in on this as well. We saw some social media reaction, and as John pointed out, not necessarily following the law, right?
Yeah, so there was a lot of reaction via social media that started early on Tuesday when there started to be, I guess, essentially rumors at that point that ICE was in town in Evansville. And then from there, when news outlets started to pick it up, us included, of course, the commenting then there sort of spiraled into a lot of different directions. And some of those things, have continued throughout the rest of the week. Like the sightings of ICE have continued that we have found at the Courier through some calls and things like that are essentially unfounded at this point. And John can probably speak to that as it pertains to the schools a little bit more for later in the week. And Tuesday specifically, I did reach out to the AVSC through their spokesman, Jason Webkenberg, and he confirmed to me that there was no ICE activity in the schools on Tuesday when they were confirmed to be in town.
I see. And as we mentioned, John, obviously social media, a place where rumors can run wild, but nothing, as far as you know, going on in any of the local schools, correct?
No, like Sarah said, the EVSC confirmed that on Tuesday, at least the day of the major raid here, if you can call it that, or their procedure, there was no activity inside of the schools. And I think it was yesterday, a rumor had floated around that one of the high schools, I won't say which one, that ICE had attempted to access one of the high schools was with a rumor. And I reached out to a law enforcement official on background, and they said that they hadn't heard anything about that, and most likely was untrue. Reached out to EVSC, and they didn't respond. But we didn't see any evidence of that going on anywhere in schools. And one of the problems is the secrecy of this. We only knew that ICE was in town because EPD and the sheriff's office released a joint news release around noon on Tuesday, and nothing from ICE. And when we reached out to ICE through their official channels, they wouldn't even say that they were here. They wouldn't even say on the record they were here. They called it a rumor, which was an odd way to word something that we had confirmed through local law enforcement that was going on. And I think in the absence of a clear idea of what they're doing, when they're here, and how they go about their business, rumors flourish. And social media, unfortunately, is just ripe for that kind of thing. We had instances where if people saw more than 2 or 3 black SUVs in a line, they assumed it was ICE. In certain situations, it could have been, it could have not been. We don't even know what kind of vehicles they were in.
Yeah. Now, the social media reaction, we talked about the rumors, but also apparently some things that were posted on the websites were correct. There were, in fact, as we know, agents in town, and so as I saw, at least on some social media, Facebook for one, that a lot of folks were trying to warn people about what was going on. Correct?
Yeah, so Facebook specifically for us too at the Courier was one that we were watching a lot to see different postings, especially from established organizations here locally who were sharing fact sheets and red card reminders, which are the ones that they suggest that the immigrant population keep with them, that contains their rights and the things that they can do when they are approached by ICE. And so like the Immigrant Resource Center here in Evansville shared a lot of helpful postings about what to do in that situation, who to call if you need help finding legal representation. There's also the very complicated part of the issue, what to do if you have children and you are afraid that you may be approached by ICE or detained by ICE, who to call to set up an advocate for your child and those sorts of things. So these established organizations that have real connections and real information to provide people, we tried to follow that as much as we could. And then unfortunately also with the social media aspect, there was a lot of hateful rhetoric in some of the commenting that got caught on by local officials, including quite a few members of city council who posted either on Tuesday or Wednesday sort of saying that they, Missy Mosby for one and Courtney Johnson another, both Democrats, Missy Mosby in the 2nd Ward and Courtney Johnson an at-large representative, both specifically brought up seeing some comments that upset them to be seeing them from people that they represent and people that live in this city. And so that was one thing too, local officials coming in and sort of telling people to remember who their neighbors are and those sorts of things was an interesting aspect to see as things were unfolding.
And we should mention too that as far as not just checking rumors through the phone and through Facebook. I mean, Sarah and I drove around how long on Tuesday? Any tip we got of where they might be, we checked all over the South Side.
And Houston did as well. Houston Harwood, our coworker.
And it wasn't just social media reaction. We had a fairly large, well-attended protest in front of the federal courthouse. When was that? It was Wednesday?
That was Tuesday night.
That was Tuesday night. Yeah, it was Tuesday night. Yeah. Dozens of people showed up for that, and that got picked up on MSNBC. And, so the reaction here was, there were a lot of the hateful comments, a lot of people just supporting ICE without being racist or helpful as well. And then there were also people who were ashamed that it happened here and that were trying to do their best to counter it in any way that they could.
Yeah, certainly it ran the gamut. I covered the protest in front of the federal building for WNIN. My count was probably more than 100 folks turned up. It was on very short notice. Rainy weather was going on. So once again, we see how social media and how word spreads around and the reaction. And this was a very quick reaction, this protest, very well attended on very short notice. Again, folks upset about what was going on. And Sarah, I didn't mean to, did you have something to add?
No, you're fine. Yeah, I was just going to say, talking about a little bit of reaction and how quick it was. Another thing as far as impact of these that wasn't necessarily a person being taken away from their family or being detained. The Haitian Center of Evansville had a cultural event planned for Haitian Flag Day that they quickly canceled after the ICE raids. I believe that it was set for May 17th. The raids that occurred on Tuesday, the event was canceled within 24 hours of those. Jelena Masco is the executive director of the Haitian Center here in Evansville. Right. She took to social media again, posted a video on the Haitian Center's page on Facebook, saying that essentially she just could not take the burden of the risk of holding an event like this, where hypothetically a lot of Haitian immigrants would be coming and gathering in one place. And she was very, very heartfelt in her message, and essentially that the community and what they wanted to see was happening was that they were not going to be able to celebrate something that's really important for them, and wouldn't be able to share these things with the other residents in Evansville.
And that's not to say that people who would, that the people at that event would necessarily be undocumented. One of the people that Houston talked to at the rally was a UE student who said that they have friends who are here legally on student visas, temporary work visas, whatever, and they are also worried that they're going to be targeted. Right.
It's certainly a lot of fear going on. That was brought up at the protest a lot. Speaking of residents who, even if they are here legally, there is that fear that you might get picked up. Yes. You may be mistakenly picked up. Those kinds of things are certainly part of the picture. We're speaking with John Webb of the Evansville Courier and Press, Sarah Loesch of the Evansville Courier and Press. We have also mentioned Houston Harwood, who was unable to join us today. He has also done a lot of reporting about the raids and the situation for the Courier and Press. Well, John, Sarah, anything else to add that we haven't touched on here?
I don't think anything specifically from this week, but as we mentioned, there are continued impacts coming from this. So I imagine that we will have future stories continuing to cover either ICE in Evansville or just the impact that it's continued to have on residents.
Yeah, as you mentioned, that one event that's really not scheduled for a couple of more weeks, but yet that has been postponed. That Haitian group has canceled that event. And, if that's where we stand at the moment, stay tuned, I think, are good words to the community here. You'll certainly hear more about it on WNIN FM, and certainly at Evansville Courier and Press. CourierPress.com is the place to find it. Sarah Loesch at CourierPress.com, John Webb at CourierPress.com, and Houston Harwood at CourierPress.com. John and Sarah, thank you so much for joining us
Thanks
today.
for having us, John.
Thank you.
Good to have you along here on the Friday Wrap. Well, coming up on the program, we will hear from WNIN President and CEO Tim Black. He will join us to talk about the zeroing out of funding from Indiana Public Broadcasting last week. And then just this week, of course, we heard from President Trump. He signed an executive order calling for an end to funding for public broadcasting. We'll talk about that. That's coming up next on the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. Hope you can stay with us. It's the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. I'm John Gibson. Good to have you along on this Friday. Well, last week, the Indiana legislature zeroed out funding for Indiana public broadcasting stations like WNIN due to an expected $2 billion shortfall in state revenue. And just this week, President Trump signed an executive order calling for an end to funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Joining me now, you've heard him on the air, certainly during pledge drives, Tim Black, the president and CEO of WNIN. Tim, thank you for joining us on the Friday Wrap.
Hey, thanks for having me, John.
Well, great to have you here. Now, folks are hearing this news, and I'm sure the question comes to mind, what this might mean for the future of WNIN.
Yes, certainly a good question, considering, as you just mentioned, the cutting of state funding and what we're hearing today, at least in the very preliminary stages about this executive order from the president. I will emphasize, John, as I have with everyone, we're not shutting our doors. We're not going off the air. We do have reserve funding that we can rely on. We certainly do not have all of the answers to many of the questions surrounding this executive order.
Sure.
So we're just taking information as we get it and moving along. But it does present itself as difficult situation for us.
Sure. Well, let's go into a few numbers here if we could. How much does WNIN and IPBS, for that matter, depend on state and federal funding? How big of a slice of the pie is that?
Well, so we'll start with IPBS and the state funding. IPBS is a group of stations around the state of Indiana. For the last several budget cycles now has been receiving right at about $3.65 million. When that gets divvied up around the state, depending on a formula that we use, WNIN will stand to lose about $440,000 during the course of a year. Right. That is about 17% of our budget. The federal dollars, and that is a big if.
It is a big if, sure.
Because no cut has happened yet with the executive order. That obviously is either heading to court right now or will be heading to court. But if federal funding were to be successfully pulled away from us, that's right at about $1 million. That's close to another 30% of our budget. So as we hear in pledge drives pretty often, I'm not the greatest in the world with math, but when you add up all those numbers, it's just right below 50% of our budget. So it's a big chunk, John.
Yes, indeed. Well, you mentioned undoubtedly there will be legal action. And correct me if I'm wrong, we were feeling fairly confident that the funding was in place for like the next couple of years, right? For CPB, at least we're talking about there. But now this is an attempt to basically take away money that's already been approved. Is that right?
Well, obviously there are lots of questions with the executive order. First of all, money for the next 2 fiscal years, both fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27 for CPB, is allocated right now. That is money that is part of the current budget that we are working from federally, and that money, as we understand it and are told often by NPR and PBS, is sitting in the Treasury. Interestingly enough, when Congress created the Public Media Act and what have you, they made certain to fund in advance CPB by 2 years to try to prevent any kind of political wrangling.
Yeah, like this. Yes.
That's very ironic. So, yes, what this executive order, though, if we're understanding everything correctly, in all honesty, John, this executive order doesn't even say anything about the money that has already been allocated. Okay. This executive order is very specific to telling CPB that any money right now is not to be spent on PBS and NPR. In fact, if you get into the weeds and the very nitty-gritty, this doesn't even apply to local stations in terms of money to be spent for PBS and NPR. Basically, what it says to a local station is if you have money, you can use it, but you're not supposed to spend it on PBS or NPR. That's all very confusing, but and we still it's to be seen what happens with the money that's already been allocated. We've been told for several weeks now that there would eventually be a request sent to Congress to ask them to rescind that money.
This is the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. I'm John Gibson. We're speaking with WNIN President and CEO Tim Black. Well, you mentioned, other possible funding possibilities. What are we looking at there? What can you share with us on that?
Yeah, as far as WNIN is concerned, first of all, John, we've always tried to be very good stewards of the money that we have received. We do have what I refer to as reserve funds that are in a local investment account that would give us some ability to continue operating for a period of time. That's certainly not going to last forever, but it does give us a little bit of breathing room and a runway, so there is that. WNIN, of course, has hard physical assets that range anywhere from our building, which we happen to own, on down the list. Those are all things that could eventually come into play in terms of trying to create funding. Those are not desired routes, but they certainly are there and present us with an opportunity. Our biggest ability to continue to stay afloat right now, John, quite honestly, is, as we do all the time, going to the people who support us. And I say always when I'm having these conversations, the folks listening to us right now, if they support us and they want to make sure that we're continuing to be a going concern, now's the time for them to really step up to the plate and to help us out.
Right. That was going to be my next question, a pretty obvious question. How can listeners and viewers help? And I know we've mentioned many times that there are a lot more listeners out there than there are people who do contribute.
Sure.
And I guess a big way folks could help is, if you do listen to us, if you rely on this service, time now to couldn't be a better time to make a contribution. Right?
Absolutely. And I will say, John, I'm going to say a big thank you, because we have already, over the course, it seems like last week lasted for a year, but since the moment we learned about state funding, but since we found out that information last Friday, we've already received a lot of very nice additional gifts from both viewers and listeners, and we would continue that call to action. You're exactly right. If someone's listening to us right now, or if someone happens to watch us on television on WNIN Channel 9, the website's the easiest place to go to make a donation. We're available via Venmo and PayPal and what have you. But certainly, if individuals think that this is an important venture in the community, now's the time to be supporting it, other than just sort of waiting to see what happens.
Yeah. Do you also suggest that listeners and viewers contact members of Congress?
Absolutely. In fact, and I'm glad you said that, John, because that may be one of the more important things to do right now. Contact your representatives in Congress, because at some point they may be asked directly to defund CPB. They obviously are still a branch of this government and have some ability to make laws and pass legislation that might affect what the president or the White House can do in the executive branch. It's important that those elected representatives hear from you. And I will also take the opportunity to remind people that that's not just in Indiana. If you're listening to us in Kentucky or in Illinois, you should contact your state's representatives, because they will all eventually be playing some role in this.
Yes, indeed. We will certainly see how it all goes. Well, anything else to add, Tim, that we haven't touched on here?
No, John, I think that's as much information as that we can get out there. I would caution people again to not go too far down the road with this executive order. Nothing's happened yet. Right. A piece of paper's been signed, and I'm not trying to make something less than what it is, but nothing's happened at this point. And there will be a court battle. There will be more information coming out about this. But certainly the writing is on the wall, if you will. And this is a fight that's not going to go away tomorrow. And it is very important for people to contact their elected officials, and if they feel so, to make an additional gift to WNIN.
That is WNIN President and CEO Tim Black. Tim, as always, thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Good to see you once again. Well, coming up on the Friday Wrap, another Tim. That's Tim Jagielo will join us. We'll hear his story about a new mural that's been put up in Haney's Corner. We'll talk to Tim about that. That's coming up on the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. Hope you can stay with us. It's the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. I'm John Gibson. Good to have you along on this Friday. Well, the Haney's Corner Arts District and the Arts Council of Southwestern Indiana have unveiled a new mural in Evansville's Haney's Corner. At the same time, the city has revived the Public Arts Commission. Let's listen to WNIN's Tim Jagielo's report.
I got it. All right.
Yes. You just stay and people come to you.
Yeah.
That's
what happens when you're a celebrity.
Artist Cleo Griffin is posing for photos with friends and family before her vibrant new mural, Radiant Revival, in Haney's Corner.
Like the simple things like sunsets can bring so much life and excitement to a community, even if it's through like a representation in a painting.
Such paintings will now be the purview of the re-established Evansville Public Arts Commission, which Mayor Stephanie Terry says will help to curate public art, such as murals.
But we hope that we're able to get some dollars allocated to help support projects like, Citywide Mural Initiative and things like that. So really excited about the work, and we're just starting it this month.
This mural was a joint project between the city, Haney's Corner Arts District, and the Arts Council of Southwestern Indiana. ArtsWin Executive Director Ann McKim says public art can define a location,
give character to it, create shared reference points and common experiences for people who frequent the neighborhood or live in the neighborhood. And so this mural is just so lovely and is so representative of Haney's Corner. We see it in
mural creator Cleo Griffin hopes her art and the new Arts Commission will encourage anyone to try art.
And to embrace what they can do with their hands, to embrace their own inner creativity that I feel like people tend to lose as they get older. Embracing that childhood liveliness, the excitement. I want people to...
You can see Radiant Revival at 58 Adams Avenue. For WNIN News, I'm Tim Jagielo.
And Tim joins us live here in the studio. As always, Tim, thank you so much for coming in. Now, the Evansville Public Arts Commission, as you mentioned, it's been revived. Can you tell us a little more about it?
I can, and a lot of it comes from the news conferences and also talking to Ann McKim, who is not the leader of it, but I could get a hold of her quickly this morning, so I learned a little bit more just so I can go into a little bit more depth. But basically, to start with, this is an effort of the mayor's office. It's a relaunch of the Arts Commission, which is not brand new. It had operated actually for, I think, about at least 20 years.
Yes, years ago. Yeah, it went away for a while, but it's back, right?
Right, and I said in the story that such murals will be the purview of it, and that's true, except for that this is on a private building technically, so their role might not be to make this happen, but they might be to guide the process in general, or at least offer suggestions if it's on a private building. But this is kind of ground floor for them, I believe. They've had one meeting, according to Ann McKim, where they just kind of talked about what had been done already. And so, again, this is, the board or the commission is supposed to have authority over public spaces, give advice for public and private locations. They can manage ideas, offer guidance, make sure the plan and the art piece is safe. She gave the example of if somebody wanted to put a barbed wire sculpture near Mickey's Kingdom or something, that would not work, would it?
Right.
Make sure it fits the location, make sure it complements the location. A focus on a safety and maintenance and location were big focuses in the past. It was kind of a narrow focus, at least in the past, according to a C&P article by Jen Crystal from 2022. And it's unclear if it's going to be the same way. They're kind of just starting out in a way. And so the goal is to curate 2D and 3D art, serve the city through art. Mayor Terry said that this kind of reaffirms their commitment to the arts, and it goes into her core priorities of neighborhood revitalization. So again, this event was kind of like a kickoff, a good time to bring this out. And again, the first meeting has been held, and it was about kind of a review from Ann McKim, who is on the commission.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about this new mural. How did it come together?
This was done like a lot of projects. It was from an RFP. And
it's a request for a proposal.
Right, yeah, exactly. And, basically it started with the RFP. The RFP was $10,000, and it was paid for by the Haney's Corner Arts District and a Haney's Corner neighborhood TIF, and ArtsWin partnered to facilitate that. And so basically Cleo Griffin submitted a plan, and because she hadn't done any murals yet. She had done some large matte paintings, but she kind of had a little extra scrutiny based on her past work to basically prove that, yes, I can do this very wide, large piece of art on the side of the building. And so they had to change locations, I believe, and but it did come together kind of quickly, still only after a few weeks, I believe, and it's out there now.
Yes, indeed. And folks will have an opportunity to see it during the first Fridays. If they haven't seen it already, there should be a chance this evening, right?
They can walk by it now, but yeah, it'll be up there. This is the 10th anniversary, I believe, for First Fridays, and it's up currently.
Yes, indeed. Perhaps I'm sure you'll put photos on the website, but you wanted to try to describe the mural, paint a picture, as it were?
I think that the title is very accurate, because she said it was inspired by sunset on the riverfront. And so there's a bit of a silhouette of the riverfront, what you might see from, Dress Plaza looking at the Kentucky side of things. And it's got concentric kind of circles with blocky colors going around it, not completely unlike our time clock. but very close together, very bright, vibrant, solid colors, and they radiate outward into blocky, kind of like sunbeams, you could call them.
Yeah.
And I think it would make a great T-shirt. And I do have pictures of it, of course. I had to cover an event last night, so the web post is not up, but it will be up. I'd say, within a couple hours at the latest.
Very good. All right. You can see pictures of it very soon at news.wnin.org. Well, that is our own Tim Jagielo. Tim, as always, thank you very much.
No problem.
Also, congratulations on the frog story getting to NPR.
Yes, yeah, that was fun to hear.
That was on All Things Considered yesterday. That is WNIN's Tim Jagielo. Once again, thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. All right. Well, coming up on the Friday wrap, we'll chat with Jevin Redman. We'll do that sports chat, several things to chat about. Also coming up, the Weekend Notebook with Katelyn Bentley. Hope you can stay with us here at the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. It's the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. And joining me now is Jevin Redman for this week's Sports Chat. Good to see you, Jevin.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Good to have you back. Well, let's talk about some things happening here in the area. First of all, the UE head basketball coach, some news there this week, right?
Yeah, head coach David Ragland, it was announced that he is getting an extension to his contract. Coach Ragland just finished up his third season this past March, and Coach Ragland is an Evansville native, a grad from Evansville Harrison High School, and has done a nice job with the program in 3 years. And Ziggy Siegfried, who is the director of athletics, announced an extension to his contract. Basically, when he signed with Evansville, it was a 5-year deal, so he had 2 years left on that contract, and he has been extended beyond that now. So good news for the Aces program, as you know, it's a program where they went through a period of time where they had 3 or 4 coaches in about 3 or 4 years. So there's some more stability with the program, and that's part of the reason for the extension.
Yes, indeed. So the UE basketball coach staying put for now. Let's talk about college baseball a little bit. It's on the home stretch, right?
It is, yeah. So final month of the regular season, and both Evansville and USI baseball teams have 9 conference games left. The Purple Aces will be home this weekend as they take on Belmont. They play tonight at 6 o'clock, tomorrow at 2 o'clock, and then Sunday at 1 o'clock. But the Aces right now, they're 8-10 in the conference. They're in 8th place. They're 3 games clear of making the postseason tournament for the Missouri Valley Conference. But, John, they're just a game back of 5th and 2 games back of 4th. So some big games here down the stretch. As far as USI, they're on the road this weekend. They're at UT Martin. They play tonight at 5 o'clock. And right now, the Scream Eagles are 500 in conference play at 9-9. They're in 6th place in the OVC.
All right. Good luck to the Aces and the Eagles. Well, let's talk about some pro baseball. The Otters, their season's coming right up, correct?
Yeah, it is. So they've actually had a couple of exhibition games this week, and their opening game of the regular season is next Thursday. They'll be at home against Gateway, a 3-game series next Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So historic Bosse Field will be busy once again starting next week.
Yes, as the Evansville Otters will be playing ball at Bosse Field once again. Let's talk about Major League Baseball just a little bit. An area player is, there's some news about an area player, right?
Yeah, so one of the bigger prospects in Major League Baseball is Colson Montgomery. He's a shortstop in the Chicago White Sox organization, and Colson Montgomery played at Southridge High School, and right now he's a number 4 prospect in the White Sox organization, but he's gotten off to a slow start in AAA. There was some rumors that he might start this season with the big league club, but he started in AAA Charlotte and has not hit very well yet, batting just 149 with 3 home runs and 6 RBIs. But what the White Sox have done is basically taken Montgomery and moved him to their complex in Arizona, where he's going to get some one-on-one work with some instructors for the next week or 2 weeks, and then probably put back into the AAA realm. So Colson Montgomery kind of stepping aside from AAA ball, but still a bright future ahead for him.
Yeah, good luck to Colson. All right, well, we can't go without talking about the Pacers. The Pacers have advanced in the NBA playoffs. They'll get back to work this weekend, right?
Yeah, so their second round series starts on Sunday against number 1 seed, the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Pacers knocked out the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round in 5 games in a best-of-7 series. It was a wild Game 5 in which the Pacers won this past Tuesday. John, they were down 7 points in overtime with 45 seconds.
Yes.
Came back and made a shot with about a second and a half left. Tyrese Halliburton hit the game winner. The Pacers won 119-118. Sets up for an exciting second-round series. The Pacers, who won 50 regular season games, they're the 4 seed, taking on the Cavaliers, who won 64 games regular season. Of course, Cleveland, the heavy favorite, as the 1 seed, but should be a fun series. That best-of-7 series starts on Sunday up in Cleveland.
Yes, indeed. And I'll also mention in the hockey hockey playoffs. It's a do-or-die game tonight for the St. Louis Blues as they host Winnipeg. Winnipeg leads that best-of-7 series 3-2. And we should probably mention as well, Jevin, the 151st Kentucky Derby is set for Sunday at Churchill Downs in Louisville. The early favorites are horses named Journalism, Sovereignty, and Sandman. So the big run for the Roses happens on Sunday over in Louisville. Anything else to add, Jevin?
No, that covers it. Busy week and a lot going on. It's a fun time of the year for the sports world here in May, and look forward to chatting again next week.
Yes, indeed. That is Jevin Redman with the Sports Chat. As always, Jevin, thank you very much. Well, coming up on the Friday wrap, the Arts Council's Katelyn Bentley will join us for the Weekend Notebook. That is straight ahead. I'm John Gibson. Please, I hope you can stay with us on WNIN. It's the Friday wrap on WNIN FM. I'm John Gibson, and joining me now from the Arts Council of Southwestern Indiana is Katelyn Bentley. Katelyn, great to have you with us.
It's great to be back.
All right, wonderful, wonderful. Well, let's talk about a lot of things happening this weekend here in the Tri-State. I'll start with the Shriners Fest. It's setting up right outside our building here on Riverside Drive. The festival on Evansville's riverfront features food trucks, live music, a car show, a beer stew, and a parade. The fest is from 4 to 11 p.m. tonight and tomorrow, Saturday, all day pretty much, from 8 a.m. to midnight. That's Shriners Fest here on Evansville's riverfront. It's getting together right now and starts at 4 this evening. Also happening tonight, it's the first Friday of the season, right, Katelyn?
Yes, and this is 10 years of First Friday, so I'm sure you've heard about the mural that went up on the side of Haney's Corner Brewhouse. So this is a great opportunity to go check it out in person. That is 5:30 to 9 p.m. tonight. There's going to be live music, food trucks, artists, and you'll be able to check out the mural.
Yeah, lots of good stuff. And also some music happening on this First Friday at First Pres, right?
Yes, so tonight at 7 p.m. at First Presbyterian Church, also in the Haney's Corner area, Hayden Ives Glasgow is going to be at the organ. And if you haven't gotten to see that organ, I think that is a great thing to do. So
Yeah, it sounds great, just great there at First Pres. Also some live music tonight in the Haney's Corner area at Patchwork Central on Washington Avenue. You can catch some activity there as well. All right, well, let's move on to tomorrow, Saturday. We have the Master Gardener's Plant Sale happening at the Vanderburg 4-H Center. It features perennial and annual flowers for sun and shade, native plants, succulents, vegetables, and herbs. It's all happening tomorrow at the 4-H Center. The Master Gardener's Plant Sale is from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the 4-H Center. Also happening tomorrow, we have a Marshall Islands Community Day at EVPL West. The library on West Franklin Street will host a program of games, art displays, and a short presentation on the Marshallese language and community. This free event is happening from 1 to 3 p.m. tomorrow, Saturday, at EVPL West. And Katelyn, I believe you've got something about a Civic Theater holding a rehearsal, or not really a rehearsal, but some training, correct?
Yes, so Civic Theater is having a monologue workshop from 1 to 4 p.m. tomorrow. So if you've got a piece that you'd like to work on for an audition, or maybe it's a performance, you can go sign up on their Facebook page. It's limited to 10 slots, and I think it's getting ready to be full, so I might go get on that now.
Yeah, you might want to take some action there. You can sign up for that at the Civic Theater website. Well, also another event happening tomorrow, and this is right up your alley. It's coming right to your door, as a matter of fact. The digitized reception at the Arts Council, right?
Yes, so we have a digital art exhibit up in the gallery right now. So we're celebrating tomorrow with our reception, and it's actually 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. tomorrow. We've got all sorts of stuff in the gallery, from digital painting, we've got interactive installations that are super neat, and some photography. So come by tomorrow at 5 p.m.
Yes, indeed. That's at the Arts Council on Main Street here in downtown Evansville. Also happening tomorrow, it's a Star Wars night at the Evansville Philharmonic. The orchestra is presenting Star Wars: A New Hope in concert. It will feature a screening of the first Star Wars film with composer John Williams' Oscar-winning score performed live by the orchestra. That starts at 7 p.m. at the Victory Theater in downtown Evansville Saturday evening. Adult tickets start at $35. Also happening, we'll move on to Sunday now. We have a Women's Suffrage March reenactment. The Evansville Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta sorority and the Evansville African American Museum are presenting a commemoration of the 112th anniversary of the Women's Suffrage March. That free event begins at the Civic Center at 3 p.m. Sunday and ends at the African American Museum. Also happening Sunday afternoon, the USI Chamber Choir is performing at Old North Church. The choir and members of the USI Irish Traditional Ensemble will perform music from their upcoming trip to Ireland. That free event starts at 3 p.m. Sunday at Old North United Methodist Church on Stringtown Road. Katelyn, anything else to add from your side of the table there?
Yeah, so the Arts Council is happy to be hosting a bookbinding workshop with Evansville Design Group on Tuesday of this upcoming week. That's May 6th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. There's a small $5 material fee you can pay at the event, but you get to go home with a book that you made. So I think that's a pretty good deal.
That's cool. That's cool. That's happening at the Arts Council Tuesday evening, you say?
Yes.
All right. That's at the Arts Council here in downtown Evansville. Well, if you have an event you'd like us to mention here on the Weekend Notebook, send it to me. Email jgibson, that's the letter J, Gibson, at WNIN.org, and we'll try to mention it right here on the Weekend Notebook. Katelyn, as always, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Good to have you here. We'd also like to thank all our guests today, including Sarah Loesch and John Webb of the Evansville Courier and Press, WNIN President and CEO Tim Black. Also a big thanks to our own Tim Jagielo. Thanks again to Katelyn Bentley. Thanks to Jevin Redman for not only the sports chat, but for engineering today's show. A big thanks to Mariah Winnie for social media support here at WNIN. Thanks to Indiana Public Broadcasting Stations for their support. Of course, thanks to listeners like you for making programs like the Friday Wrap happening here at WNIN FM. I'm John Gibson. I hope you and yours have a fine weekend. And for this Friday, that is a wrap on 88.3 WNIN FM, Evansville, Henderson, and Owensboro. With your support, we're building a better tri-state together.